jumped up and gets into the bread box. But this time, as she was running across the counter, she walked in the water level one, and they keep going water.
Oh, no way. I've been in the same.
It was innocent. Plug was not closed. Jeez.
No. Oh, we have a friend that had a puppy, just like this. And they put it in the bathroom. She chewed.
Good.
And so they water.
I could easily.
Yeah, she was pretty nice.
Yeah, good.
You know, I bought it. I think it's 1966. That's my favorite.
Did she still illustrate it?
No.
He's a youngster, isn't he?
All right, we'll start the meeting for September 28th, 2022, 6 o'clock. Welcome, everybody. I'd like to start with public comments for items that are on the agenda for discussion or action. Moving on to the town administrator report.
I have quite a few things this evening. One is I want to wish Chris happy birthday. It's his birthday today.
Happy birthday.
So a few things that I got added on that I'm just going to briefly touch on before I go through the ones that were on here. One is on a positive note. We successfully submitted the community resiliency partnership application that Carol and I have been working on with Island Institute, and Kim Hamilton was a big help with that. Taxes are due on Friday. So that haven't paid them yet. And the last couple of weeks, if you haven't gotten a response to an email or they bounced back, we've been in the process of switching over to Office 365. We're finally successfully switched, so there might be a better response to emails now. So those are the three random things. The first thing on the TA report is the main municipal bond application. So we submitted an application for $250,000 dredging bond and for $975,000 broadband. We were approved for the full $250,000 for dredging. At this point, the broadband, we were only able to be approved for $250,000. When we get to the broadband project agenda item, there'll be more information about that. The next thing on the agenda or on the report is paving. There's been a lot of stuff delivered last week and this week. Over 40 loads for the paving that is going to do to start on the 5th, 7 a.m. They're bringing the equipment out here and 4 roads, Old Cart Road, Fenderson, Caps Road, and Chandler's are going to get paved, and they're hoping to be here from Wednesday to Friday. So that will be good news. And then the one thing that we'll have to keep in mind come budget season is just like the roads that we had done this summer for chip seal, for the roads that had been previously paved, these roads that are getting paved at chip seal, they recommend to do for the next year. So that's something that will be coming up in the, next summer. The harbor master position job description. During the last budget process, there was a discussion about needing time to look at the harbor master job description in general. And so, well, it doesn't seem like it's too far away. It is going to sneak up on us sooner than we'd like. So we really need to have that conversation amongst others. And so start thinking about what is needed to start that conversation. We are going to put it on the October 5th agenda item because something else fell off of that agenda. So that will be on the next agenda item. I did email on Monday coastal waters and shellfish committees and the harbor master, letting them know that this is gonna be on the agenda item. I did not hear back from anybody about that. Meeting with Long Island Town Administrator reached out to try to, get together and just have a conversation with both islands about, where, you know, we have mutual interest, what we're doing similar, what we're doing different, how we can balance ideas off of each other. So, I am looking to see if a, select board member is interested in joining. We're gonna do that on Friday, October 7th at noon time. So, Carol?
Yep.
All right. Growth ordinance, received a correspondence from Jim about a discrepancy in our growth ordinance. And so I had attached the email with information about it. And so this is really something that, in terms of how many houses are allowed in a year, one section of the ordinance says no more than 20 in a 5-year, but then another section says 4. And so that needs to be adjusted and corrected based on what voters want. So that is something that probably should be an agenda item for next time around. Yes.
Good point.
Huh?
What you said is not exactly what it says. The somewhat conflicting or confusing early statement is no more than 20 permits over a 5-year period beginning on July 1, 2001 shall be issued. And that is confusing, but it's a little bit different than what you said. And if you were around back then, which weirdly I was, there's a reason why that's there. So probably a future agenda item. Or
Do you want-
fair.
Well, so just a question, is this a planning board thing or a select board thing? I mean, would it be the planning board look at it, make a recommendation to the select board?
That would be my thought. They'd have to change the ordinance.
I mean, it's a land use related ordinance, but no.
I think changing the ordinance is appropriate, or at least looking at changing it, and that would be the planning board to do that. Although either the select board or the planning board can recommend changes to ordinances, town meeting votes on those changes, proposed changes. But in terms of Jim's interpretation, I think he now understands that it is no rollover. And it's quite clear if you go to the second.
The one thing that we do need to keep in mind is we are creeping, I have to look at the exact, that's something that I need to sit down and talk to Chris about this week, is the deadline for anything that's going to be on the November election. We have a lot of ordinance changes that are going to be coming up, so all the documents in the required process, that deadline is really creeping up in the next week or two. So anything that we would want for that particular election would really need to be done sooner than later.
Carol?
Yeah, I think this probably needs a longer time frame than November. We need a public hearing.
So do we need to talk about this, or do we just need to?
Well, I was just curious who starts. Is it the planning board or the select board? That was really my question.
Mark?
I think it's the planning board back to the select board and so on.
Right, so we just, have to request the planning board to look at this section. The growth ordinance. And make recommendations.
Really quick, what are we asking them to look at if it's clearly not being able to be carried over? Wasn't that the only discrepancy?
Might have been one other thing that popped up, but the one specific detail that they, I think, should look at is that early statement regarding 2001. And that relates back to when Cumberland put a freeze and then lifted it. And that was why they did the 20 over 5 years, starting on that date. The language should have included, and after that, see section, whatever it is below, that says 4 per year plus 2 for affordable housing, and they don't roll over.
Yeah.
They just didn't.
My only question is our charge that we're asking the planning board to consider sending back was clear.
Jim's memo is pretty clear, and he also asks that they look at the growth permit fee.
And that's something that was recommended in the changes of the fees, but because that's the one change in the ordinance itself, it had to wait once again for, and I think the recommendation was from $100 to $1,000 for new road, yeah.
Thank you.
Kara?
Yeah, just the only thing, I mean, Jim sort of implies that we should increase it, and I'm not sure. I think the planning board should decide. So I'm not sure Jim's memo reflects the community or the board's, intention. I think the main thing that we should clarify is that we have this date from, what is it, 2021? And that, we're well past that date, so I think that they should address that, they can either eliminate it or whatever. But embedded in the memo is sort of the implication that we should increase the permits. And I'm not sure that's the direction we necessarily want to give the planning board. I think they can consider that and come back. That's how I feel. And then the other thing was, we may recall, just before they implemented this, it triggered about 20 permits because people were so panic stricken that they wouldn't be able to get a building permit. So I don't want to repeat that situation again.
One other comment, the planning board's charge is always to consider, relative to Jim's inference that we might want to consider raising the number of growth permits. Planning board's charge is always to consider such ideas in the light of the comprehensive plan. That's their guiding document.
So my thoughts are just sending the memo and have them come back with their recommendation.
It's probably by some town meeting.
Yeah. Likely ask if we get something.
The last thing that I have under the town administrator's report is in reference to the public comment at the last meeting that was made by Jim Gallagher. And it was in reference to 107 Cottage Road and the lack of responses from the CEO. In here, I just say that I've stayed in communications with him about it throughout the process because we received a lot of questions in the office. And at one point, I even went and he gave me a tour of the perimeter and showed me which permit was located, where the property lines were and so forth. And we do have a folder in the office that has all of the permits in it and all of the proper documents. And so I believe that he has done all the proper steps and issued all of the permits based on the appropriate ordinances. He's received a lot of emails surrounding around that, and I think that it hasn't been always clear what the direction was. And so recently there was a request that the communication about this particular property either come from a lawyer that's representing Mr. Gallagher and a number of other people, or Mr. Gallagher. And so now there's just a lawyer that he's communicating with. So it seems like there's a better funnel of communication that's happening. But we do have a folder on that whole entire property at the office if anyone is interested in looking at it.
Yeah, just on this issue, I did, Jim Gallagher called me, and I guess I understood from him that one of the problems was the folder was on the code enforcement officer's person and not available at the office for quite a period of time. And I was just wondering if that's a common practice, because that seems rather inconvenient for community members. And it seems in this day and age that the materials could be scanned right away, permits, anything, and being made available in a digital format so that people can access it from anywhere. So I'm wondering if that could be a practice going forward.
And it is with this particular property, the level of discussion that it created in the office has been far bigger than other properties that we've experienced in recent years. And so what he did is he did end up, if there was an ongoing permit that he was getting questions, he had that information on him. And then that created that issue where if somebody came in to look at it, it wasn't there, and the next time they came in, he wasn't there to explain it to them. So there was that miscommunication about that part, and that's the unfortunate part is he is part-time, so if he takes it with him, it's often with him for a week. But that hasn't happened before, to my knowledge.
But the point is, had he scanned it, he could have taken the electronic copy with him and left the paper copy with the desk. That's the point. And to your point of, this is the biggest one we've seen, hang on.
We gotta.
So we have to improve
we've
our
got a few other
processes
ones that are
so that
coming
we
in.
can meet the obligation to the public. I'm sure we're gonna hear more about this.
Fair.
Yeah, and I guess that was the point, is that I think the information has to be available at the town office, it's our obligation. And the code enforcement officer shouldn't have the only copy off-site. The other thing is, and maybe I misunderstood what you said, but I would hope that we would make it feasible for any community member who has a question about a project, to be able to contact the town office, not have to go through an attorney necessarily. And yeah, that can be difficult to handle, but that's part of our job as a town. So I hope that we wouldn't discourage people from, contacting us or making them feel like they have to have an attorney in order to pursue a land use question. So that's just, I think as these things become more heated, it's common that people might hire an attorney, but it should be that anybody who has a question, whether they're property abutter or not, should be able to come and look at it. So that's just, I think we need to do a good job of making the information available and being responsive to the public. It's our job.
That's everything under the town administrative report. There is a report from our health officer, and it's just a routine annual report that just kind of covers anything from brown tail moth to ticks, bed bugs, things like that. So and that's, I have a number of communications, but I'll share those other communications when we get there.
Would you entertain a couple of questions back to the town administrator report for a second? Vika, on the third paragraph, the harbor master position, job description, that we may have a bigger discussion, or likely we'll have a bigger discussion on the budget process. Speaking only for myself, I would like to have some input from both the Coastal Waters Committee and the Shellfish Committee. I'm not sure what format that would be appropriate in. I'd like to hear from both of those committees on their relationship and their opinions on that position as it relates to both the harbor master and the Shellfish position. And I would like to see the existing job description and duties, existing pay. I think Jen started with some comparisons of what some other communities are doing or not, and any recommendations that can come from within our operations. Myself. And then very quickly on the paving, I was not able to meet with you with the foreman for all states, Doug Fowler, but I understand that he kind of said, well, we're not going to be able to move the two telephone poles on the corner of the can, whereas at least until next spring or summer likely now, that he thought, you guys thought that maybe our town road crew could blend some more leftover coal mix into those areas if we decide to do something with it.
Yeah, that's correct. He said that there should be enough product left over that it is something that Public Works crew can easily add on to the road if it's just a little corner, as long as it is done so before the chip seal goes on the following year.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Anybody else? Moving on, regular business. 22-086 to hear an update on the broadband project.
All right, so, couple different things that I have that I've been dealing with, and then, there are a few people here from, the committee that might be able to, weigh in. One is on the 5th, I'm gonna meet with Mark from Axiom to kind of touch base with him about, where we stand on things. He's communicated a lot with the committee, but I would like an opportunity to meet with him, so then I get an understanding from his perspective where things stand. As far as the bond bank application, and the reason why we only were able to receive $250,000 is, with this particular loan, that we're requesting, there are two different issues, is that, it is something that to this day hasn't really been dealt with by the main bond bank, and so they weren't able to provide it or figure out a way where it could be a tax exempt project. And then the other thing is whether it could be approved in general. They did, based on a number of reasons and qualifications, were able to approve it as a general obligation bond. But they were not able to really make it considered as a tax exempt. What that really means in terms of the interest rate, it really isn't going to do anything different as a regular bond bank loan. But what it does at this point is it makes it what they're referred to as bad money. And it makes it, so what they do is, all of the applicants that apply for a bond bank in a certain period, they take a pool of all of those, and then the bad money, they cannot reward more than 5% of the total pool. And so that's how that number got determined about how much qualification. Initially, we were able to qualify for $300,000, but then somebody fell through, so the number for the overall dropped down, so that's only at $250 now. I did meet with Mark and our town attorney about this, so our town attorney is aware of this. I have also had to deal with a different attorney that deals with the bond bank applications. So they thoroughly tried doing everything they could, but it is what it is. The good news is that we still received it for 20 years, and our application will remain in the pool for the spring season. So hopefully, in May of 2023, we can receive more money. So what this does really for the project is just delays when we're getting that $975,000, so $250, and then whatever is next time and so forth. So any questions about that?
Any impact on the project timeline?
That's something that Michael can speak to.
That's an open question. I have to do a little more reading. But we think, based on some very rough calculations, that we'll be able to buy the materials, the money that's available from the grant, is $250. We have 200,000 given to us, we can request another 4. The last 200,000 only comes after the project. It's possible we'll have to have some kind of a bridging loan, because what we're gonna do 200,000 after the project's all done. I don't know. It will delay things slightly, because it means that we can't start actual construction until we get more money. Because we have to start paying labor costs, which is the biggest part of it. On the other hand, it might not delay too much, because the whole make-ready process can take 8 to 10 months. So that brings us around to May or June anyway. So there are unanswered questions there. I can't really put it better than that, but that seems to be how it is. What we'll do is prioritize the materials we need to get and get, we've already ordered the fiber cable, which is the one with the longest lead time. And we'll look at other lead times and prioritize the ones with long lead times. And we'll get them.
Mark?
Is the $800,000 grant from the feds a reimbursement grant?
No, we can request the money and then spend it.
Which we already received, one chunk of the money, we received $200,000, and so Axiom ordered the cables. And so I created a general ledger account, put the money in there, and then when we paid the $140,000 bill, it came out of that account, so it was kind of just a wash.
And we can request another half of the account, so we request up to 3/4 of it. In the last bit, we only get half the system, that's a quarter, we don't, the system's tested. So that's in that sense reimbursement on that part.
Thank you.
Are other towns experiencing the same type of thing with the broadband as did other communities?
There's so the town of Shebang and Leeds are the only two towns that were in the current, the bond bank application, and we're speaking with, the attorney that I've been dealing with is Alyssa, and she said that they're expecting and they're planning and they're rewriting things in a way because they're well aware that there's going to be a large influx of these type of bonds coming their way. We're one of the two towns that really kind of, for a smaller town, we're ahead of it a little bit. And with Leeds, they're taking out a different type of their loan where they're doing it directly through the bank, so their interest rates are going to be higher. So they're going to pay a little bit more, and they're not going into the pool until the spring. So yes, other towns are experiencing, and a lot more to come.
Yeah, Somerville and Washington, at least are in, Idaho are in the same situation. They haven't, I think they haven't got this far.
Eric?
And have you, communicated with, I don't know what they're called, the main connectivity or main broadband or whatever they are now?
Initially, I made them aware of the problem. Their answers weren't very satisfactory. On Friday, every Friday, there's a kind of broadband Zoom discussion. And my intent this Friday was to say, why is the state doing something? This is state agencies that are making
Right.
problems. Why? Let's,
That was my question.
yeah,
Okay,
that's.
you're on it.
Any other questions?
The next thing about the broadband is letter of credit. So part of this whole entire process, and this is another thing that I've met with Mark and our town attorney about, is that we need to have a $300,000 letter of credit for the pole licensing, and that number is based on the number of poles that we have. What happened was I had to submit, I double checked with our town attorney to make sure that I had the authority to go through this process, and she said, yes, with all of the steps that we've taken, and with all of the votes and with everything, that it was fine. The tricky part was because of the fact that we haven't had an audit the last 2 years, that it required pulling all of this different financial stuff, which took a while to do. They received it. We got authorized for it. They sent it to me. They had Donna Damon's name on it as the chair, because what they took is they took the minutes from when we were approved for the 975. So when I asked them to change it to either my name or Bo's name, they retracted and said, we want a motion that states that Board of Selectmen. So I went back and I met with our town attorney again, and she said that it's just for a bank. It's just their way of logistically really trying to be extra secure. So she provided me the suggested motion that you see in here, and so I forwarded that to the bank just to make sure that they were okay with it. They were okay with that, but they wanted an additional sentence added to it, that includes, the letter of credit with Machias Savings Bank and authorizing the town administrator to sign it, so it's just at this point, a legality thing for the bank to need in order to give us the piece of paper that they already gave us with the wrong person's name on it, so.
So this motion needs to be expanded in order to meet the needs.
So this motion, and then if you add another sentence that says, this includes the letter of credit with Machias Savings Bank and authorizing TA to sign it.
Bob,
I move to authorize the town administrator to take all actions necessary to enter into full licensing agreements required for the broadband project, including but not limited to taking all actions required to acquire the necessary performance guarantees for those agreements. This includes the letter of credit with Machias Savings Bank and
Authorizing TA.
authorizing the town administrator according to sign.
there's a second. Carol?
Second.
All right, any discussion? Any comment from the public?
This is more or less pure harassment, but certainly something we'll be have to live with.
If you're involved with nonprofit checking accounts, this is all a direct result of the debacle that caused the financial crash of 2008. So it's
Yeah,
not necessarily a bad thing.
I
All right. Any other comments? All right, all in favor?
The last thing that I have about the broadband is, one of two things that need to be done, letter of credit and the insurance need to be done for the committee to proceed with, the next steps. And, this is just more, once again, I checked with, legal just to make sure that I was, authorized to go forward with this. And, the suggestion was that, yes, I was, and it would just be good to let you guys know, and it's just that, the town was approved for, insurance coverage. The money would be coming out of the broadband reserve account, and that's something that I will, proceed with, probably next week, so.
Does the broadband reserve account still have around 45,000?
It is 50,000.
It's,
It's probably 55 by now, so 50 something.
Thank you.
It's a little bit of that is earmarked for the design. The fact to switch over into the bond, I'm sorry, the grant fund, because design and testing is a legitimate thing for the grant. So we don't have to use our own.
Thank you.
There you go.
That's everything I have for broadband.
All right, any comments or questions?
Since I'm here, I'll answer the question everybody has.
Nothing? Anything from the public? All right, moving on. 22-087, to review the final stone work report from Wright Pierce and take any necessary action.
So the packet contains a fraction of what the report was. The actual report was 174 pages. Which the report is in there. What I left out and what I have to share with you is all of the previous documents that were provided prior. So every single note, every single comment from everyone that did the surveys, all of the details and photos that were taken, excuse me, when they were doing, determining, how solid the stone pier was and so forth, but the actual wording and the information that, you needed to see and read is what was in, the packet. And so on there, you'll see, right here is recommended what the next steps would be. And so the next step would be to issue a request for an RFQ. And that's something that Jason from Right Pierce also shared with me. as a sample of the wording that we would send out, and that's what I shared with you. I didn't get it in time to share it in the packet, but that's something that I provided to you today.
Any questions?
Actually, yes, who will manage sending out the RFQs and how will we review? When
I would, so you would determine where you want them advertised. Typically, we put it on the municipal. And then as they come in, we would make an agenda item and kind of review them and decide which contractor, or what we want. And so there's qualifications, evaluation criteria, and so forth. So they would come to me, but then you would be reviewing them.
So it doesn't go into papers or, it doesn't go into the local papers, it doesn't go into trade journals, it just goes to municipal.
It can go wherever you want it to go. I'd have to double check. We might have some kind of requirement, but as far as I know, I think you decide where and how you want to advertise for it.
Something I've never done before.
Yeah.
Karen?
So I'm just a little bit confused about the RFQ. So this report involved even the engineering, the stability assessment. Is that what you're saying? This is all one project? So I guess I'd like to see the whole thing myself. So I guess I don't know what else it involves, you know, the other parts of the project, because that's before my time on the board. But so before I would want to formally approve it, I'd like to see the whole thing. But as far as the RFQ process goes, is this related to the Shore and Harbor grant application that, you know, the town was awarded about $50,000?
Yes.
So that's what you're referring to for the RFQ?
This is going to be, so whoever you would hire to do this next phase of it, one of the things that would be worked on is to determine the level, you know, that the stone pier will need to be based on the Shore and Harbor grant.
But is the RFQ meant to go for more, you know, be more than that work, or is it just
Yes.
the
It's
flooding?
more than that work. So
So where is the money coming for that?
if that money would come out of the stonework reserve account.
And how much money do we have in that?
Right now,
So you're talking about an RFQ for more than the Shore and Harbor grant that's
Yes.
gonna encompass a big project.
essentially it would be, yes. And that's,
So how much money about?
that I don't know. I'm not sure about that. But currently,
Couldn't we do an RFQ for just the next step, which would be the flooding part?
yeah, absolutely. So if you look at, where is it? On page, what is 5-18 of your packet. There's an outline for the conclusion and recommendations for next steps. These are kind of the next steps that would be recommended. So the issuance, the request for qualification would be this, what he suggested. And if you read, it was basically to take this information and then work on determining and working with that particular grant on the next steps, which would be, you know, determining how much the stone work. They made a recommendation, I believe it was 4 feet raised. And so you would determine whether you want to keep it at that or raise it more. But I mean, I don't know the number of how much, what there are costs would be, I honestly don't, because this is the first time I'm going through this whole process too.
Right, but we have an appropriation of some grant funds of about 50,000, the town's kicking in 25.
Yes, yeah,
And that's to cover kind of the flood modeling. So I guess it seems a little amorphous beyond that to me. And I'm a little reluctant to send out an RFQ and hire a contractor that would think they're gonna do the whole caboodle when we don't even know what the design elevation is yet. I mean, that's just my thinking.
My understanding is it's not gonna be going for the whole thing. We're not, I don't anticipate that this RFP would be to sign somebody that we're gonna get a quote for how much it's gonna cost from this point until the building point. I think that it would just be so similar to with, Wright Pierce, there's two different agreements that have been signed. So there are two different steps. So the first one was about 124,000, and then we revisited and it was an additional 24. So I think that it would be the first step of it. I don't anticipate that it's the whole from start to finish process.
Okay, well, okay, I'm not any clearer, I'm afraid.
All right, so my thoughts are, we can push the request for qualifications, the RFQ, till next week, we can discuss it, get some more information on it. Get some clarification. Let's just go with the stone wall, the right Pierce. See if we'll, vote on accepting his last report. I know you said his last report is like 90-something pages long. So that's why we didn't get the whole report.
No, well, I know, but couldn't I get it electronically?
Well, so the whole report, yes, absolutely. And what you received, I didn't mean to imply that I didn't give you the whole report. The whole report as you received was in it. And everything you read was the report. What I excluded in printing everything out were the details of, like, there's like 40 pages of pictures of the stone pier.
Okay.
Things like that. I didn't exclude the actual report. But yes, I absolutely can give the whole.
Right, and I don't want to hold up the process of approval. I guess one thing I want to understand is this is sort of a conceptual design, and my understanding is, you know, it could evolve over time. Right?
Yes, and that's something that he does state in this report, that this isn't, accepting this doesn't mean that it's 100% gonna be like this, that this is a design that you're gonna have a, you know, idea with moving forward and change it based on needs.
This is kind of the drawing where we.
I think what we're voting on is, has Wright Pierce completed their obligation to prepare the design, concept design,
Concept.
Yes,
not that a concept design is
the final thing, yes, you're not voting to say that this is the plan that we're going for a bill in the future.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine that they've completed their contractual obligation. Yeah, that's what you're talking about.
Sure. I guess you would have a motion on that.
Yeah, let's start with a motion and then a second, and then we can discuss it some more.
I would move that we accept this Stonewall assessment final report from Wright Pierce as they're having completed their obligation for the conceptual design phase of this project.
One second.
Yeah, second. All right.
I think we should be clear with the public and ourselves about what these steps are going to be. And I think we're going to need to be thoughtful and careful about the steps, because eventually we're likely going to send out a big RFP and bring back some numbers and some final designs, tweaked or not, which is for the public to consider at the Stone Wharf. And anytime there's taxpayer money involved, and there will be a lot if we get to that point, whether we qualify for grants or not, then it goes to vote at some point, with some more public hearings. Thank you.
Yeah.
I agree with that, you know, we've accepted, the work done so far. I know you want to talk about it next week, but I'm just gonna throw it in there that I agree with Carol that the RFQ, the next step is to look at the flood down there and hire somebody to take care of that. Because the steps after that, whether it's widening of the road, acquiring property, there's a lot more to that, and we're not there yet.
Again, my comment would be to just concerned that if we're hiring a individual just to do that, so we might be paying more for him to just do that. Not that we're not gonna have good information and stuff.
Conversely,
With the other,
if we hire an engineering firm, if we hire an engineering firm who's capable of doing the whole 9 yards, and then they go out and hire that individual who just does that small piece, then they're gonna slap 10%.
Fair.
I guess my only thought is sort of similar to Jen, that piece is fundamental to any next step in the design. It kind of should have been done before even maybe the conceptual design, so I think it's important to complete that and how I guess it would be helpful to go back and look at, we can get some quotes and see what it costs. I think we won't have any trouble if the cost of doing sea level or whatever, the flood elevation modeling is less than what we have allocated. We can find a way to use the money appropriately, I'm sure. I mean, we've already spent, by the time, it will be close to 175,000.
This particular process, yeah.
Well,
so-
I mean, the town's already out of pocket spent 100, it would be 175 after the end of this, is that right?
Right here alone, it was 124,000 and another 25,000, so around 100.
Right, and then
For,
25.
yeah, for this, so essentially this picture of, the potential example of project and, the stability study. And I think that's what people don't often realize is, these little studies and hiring these engineers to do this costs a lot of money every time to do it.
So this RFQ that we're asking, is it just to have an engineer look at the height of the water to go to try to contest what FEMA's saying? Is that why?
So
They have to, they do modeling, they actually use a numerical model to calculate, to basically challenge FEMA's more simplistic analysis that takes the site conditions and really use it. And it could, I think the cost, I don't know what the cost is, but it's gonna be more than 25,000. It's gonna be 50 grand, I would guess, so. I don't know, we can find out, but it's a pretty involved effort.
I would suggest we go ahead and finish up our discussion on the Wright Pierce part of things.
Yeah.
And then move forward and talk a little bit further about the RFQ.
You want to do that this week? You want to do that today?
Yeah, have some observations.
Any objections to that?
No, I think that's good.
All right. So, any more comments on this motion? Any comments from the public on this motion? All right, all in favor? All right, Bob?
I would suggest that we move forward with the RFQ specifically for the conversation that's covered on pages 3-4 through 3-8, which addresses the various approaches and analyses and organizations involved in determining what sea level rise forecasting out to do. And that we go out with RFQ first, or request for qualifications, and then request for proposals, but just on that area. And I would suggest that Vika develop that RFQ aimed at pages 3.4 through 3.3-8 and bring it back to our next meeting, and then we vote on it at the next meeting. I would also suggest that we talk to some engineering firms about where we should advertise. Besides just name municipal, we could ask friends from the community who are involved in engineering. We could ask Phyllis, we could ask Pete Mahar, people like that. Where do they go looking for work? Where does Carol go? Carol doesn't have to look for work. So where do they go looking for work?
So I have one, just, I guess, our next meeting is next week. So to gather the information that you're asking me to gather for this, but then you asked all of the list of the things for the harbor master position, we really need to have this agenda full, posted and advertised by Friday. I I can't get that work done in that time manner. I'm just being honest. So all of that information and gathering all that and the harbor master, it's not realistic. We won't have time to do all that. So I'm happy if we push it back to the following meeting, and then that would give us more time to gather all that.
Karen?
Yeah, and I, having not seen this till tonight, I
Yes.
kind of want an opportunity to review the RFQ format. I would be happy to help Vika put together an RFQ.
Yes,
That's a
because
lot.
I've never done that.
That's a lot to ask, and I think one of the things that's become apparent is kind of the deliverable side of things. What we want to be sure we get even as a, deliverable, as in the maps and things. So I think it needs a little bit of thought, and so maybe we could put it on the agenda for the meeting after next. And, kind of go over the format, and that gives us some time to think about even just the format.
So the next meeting is going to be the 19th of October.
Mark?
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear with Vika and everyone, my comments about the harbor master shelter position. I don't think there's a huge hurry in preparing, but I think we've got a little bit of time before the budget season, so I don't want you to think that.
No, I just wanted to, I guess, make a point that all these little things, in 2 days, we're not gonna get it done. So, yeah, if we push this to the 19th, then that I think will be a very realistic time to gather all this information and have something a little bit more solid to vote on.
I think your request, most of that stuff is fairly easy to get,
And we've got some time.
so. I'd rather start the discussion sooner than later, and then if we need to tweak it, then we can.
Well,
We have time.
yeah.
Bob? Good, that's it. Jen?
Just a question, is it normal practice? I thought this was kind of unusual that, the RFQ example was sent by somebody that could be potentially, bidding on that project. I've never, is that just?
I don't know,
common
because
practice?
I've never gone through this process.
I just thought that was kind of odd.
Yeah.
All right, any other comments? All right, so we're pushing the RFQ for a couple weeks, get revised. Anything else on the board? Moving on. To 22-088, to hear an update on dredging and take any necessary action.
Can we skip this discussion? All right, so I spoke with Mark Cable about the dredging, and unfortunately, it's about as worse news as you can get. So I attached the email that he sent me about the conversation that he had with Burnham, which is the company that did the dredging. And basically what they're asking for, they completed 89% of the project. The initial cost was $1.2 million. The town was ultimately responsible for 20% of that. They did not complete for various reasons, 11% of it. They were asked to complete that project. Army Corps had a specific number that they thought that would be relatively close to that. When they brought it to Burnham, they came back with a number that was almost double that. So what they're asking for is $2 million to complete the whole project. 1.4 of that is to complete the 11% that has not been completed, which is 4,000 cubic yards. And then they're looking for something called request for equitable adjustments, and they're asking $800,000 for that. And that's just them basically trying to claim money for the work that they supposedly lost by not completing that. I had spoken to Mark about this. He and his team, because all of this is in the hands of Army Corps, They asked them to come back with a more reasonable number, and Burnham was taking their time to do so. So I did this update on the 15th, followed up with Mark. They haven't heard from them yet. The suggested and very possible reality at this point is that Army Corps is going to go out to bid for a new company that's going to be a little bit reasonably more priced in this matter. The unfortunate part is, in order to do that, the dredging will not be done this fall. It's going to have to be pushed back and hopefully be done next spring. And then the other aspect of this is Mark Cable is retiring in 2 days. So we have a whole nother person that we're gonna have to try to deal with, that's gonna try to understand this little community and so forth. So unfortunately, we were so close to completing it, but not quite there yet. The one thing that is gonna be hard for us not to really know what's gonna happen is that $800,000 REA, as they refer to. That's something Mark said could stretch out for years. Firm can take it to court and fight for it. So he said very often, they've settled those cases. In the past, they've won a couple of them. They've recently won against Burnham with the same exact type of request. But often they have to settle and pay something. So we, in the next 6 years, very well might be responsible with 10% of whatever the settlement might be, so. How's that?
If I understand correctly, it's stretching out longer doesn't hurt us operationally. It's not gonna hurt barging, it's not gonna hurt CTC. It's stretching out longer, given the current inflationary environment, means that whatever solution we eventually come up with whatever supplier, is probably gonna cost more each year than the 5.
Correct.
But we're not risking that thing that we're paying for, which is the long-term provision by the federal government of all of our dredging in the future because we paid this time. That stretching out doesn't affect that, right?
It doesn't, that's correct. The unfortunate part is, we have to accept, the full completed scope of work, and we haven't done that, because we have decided to have the full 100% of it completed. And a lot of these stone work drawings are dependent on that dredging being completed in the barging area, which isn't done now, which is a big part of it, so.
Hopefully the dredging gets done before we actually put shovels in the water.
Oh, gosh, I hope so, because that's like years. I don't want to be dealing with this dredging thing for a couple more years. So, that's the dredging.
Kara?
Did Mark tell you who his, replacement is? Because
He did tell me who the replacement was, and I forwarded and kind of said, looking forward to meeting you, but, didn't hear anything back.
Okay.
And his name actually might be in the
I
email
know.
that I shared with you on the very bottom. I don't remember what it is, but it's in there.
No, but that's the guy we want to get to know.
Yes, yeah.
But it actually says either he or one of his project managers. So we don't really know who it is yet.
All right, any other comments? All right. No necessary action to be taken.
No, just an update.
22-089 to discuss Bennett's Cove Road and take any necessary action. All right, so I had Vika compile some information. This is part of the information that was in the town office for Bennett's Cove. It's all available for you guys to review if you guys want. So figured we just talk about it and see, look at what, if there's any information that would be useful for us. Try to move ahead. And if I got a comment, question,
I read through the information, no news there. Yeah. several sides to the story. That's usually the case. Yeah.
So I had her send, give us the map also, which shows the commercial fishery, maritime activities. And did you ever get clarification on the maritime activities?
There are some definitions that I included in the packet.
Oh, yeah, there it is. All right. Here's- So on the map itself, there's the red line. And then, so
Map's a little tough to read.
Yeah. I printed it as big as I could based on the computer capabilities we have.
And
all right, so where Bennett's is, it looks like it's red. It's commercial fishery, maritime activities, and we were questioning what maritime activities meant. So they did the research on, what was this on?
DEP.
Yeah.
Okay. So maritime activities means the construction, repair, storage, landing, and unloading, loading and unloading of boats, chandlery, and other commercial activities designed and intended to facilitate maritime trade. So. Can you interpret that anyway? I want to, I guess. Bob.
I was just gonna suggest that, when we get the survey, we would specify to whomever the surveyor is, that they also reference that zone, or that, we've called overlay, the CFMA. Yeah, whatever it is, overlay. Commercial maritime fisheries overlay as part of the survey, so we know exactly what it says.
Okay. You need to repeat that? Eric.
So the zone is a local zone though, right? I mean, so I'm just curious, isn't the definition in our zoning ordinance? Isn't that where we should be looking in our shoreline zone? Maybe I'm confused. Because I think it's a local shoreline zone, no? I mean, it's not, it probably is the same, but I just wanted to keep. These are the general definitions for chapter 100 or 1000 or whatever it is. But, no. Anyway. Often, you know, Mr. Planning Board here can let us know.
We'll keep on.
It's not critical, but I just wanted to be sure we reference the right thing, and, yeah, that zoning map is, I'm trying to remember how it was generated, I don't know. You could check with,
This particular map,
well, you could check with Judy Colby George, might be able to give you sort of a parcel map with that zone on it, because I think she would be able to do that, and that might be very useful for you, for us.
Yeah.
Because I think she probably generated this map. Yeah, she did. The zoning map. So what you could ask her for is a close-in view of like the several parcels in the area with the zone on it.
Ben?
So is it, there's a lot of information, like Bob said, read it all. So as a board, I think it's important that we're looking at what benefits the whole community. And whether we like it or not, then it seems to be a place that is being utilized by large companies to come in. And I think it's up to us as a town to make that area safer for pedestrians, for residents, for whatever, but also for the traffic that's coming on and off of that. And I think it will help with a survey to see, you know, what we can do down there. Like I said, I think it's really important to clean up as a town, you know, the junk, lobster boats and whatever. But what I don't want to happen, and it's happening already, is for companies will not want to come here because of the difficulty and the time that it takes them to come on and off. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of leeway as far as asking, you know, different barge companies to come further down the bay to go, you know, to Stoneview. So I think it's up to us as a town to improve the site with whatever we need to do, whether it's go through DEP to, you know, make that a true barge ramp that will have, because I think it makes more sense to have trucks come on and off quickly, efficiently, safely than what's going on now. And to say that there isn't going to be barging at Bennett's, I don't see that that is in the best interest of the town and in our future for a whole. So, that was my 2 cents.
Real quick, back to definitions, our zoning ordinance and shoreline zone ordinance do not refer or do not provide a definition, I should say, for maritime activities, in which case we would fall back on the DEP definition. Our zoning ordinance does refer to commercial fishing activities. It defines it, and it defines it almost exactly word for word as was from the DEP.
Right, so we were asked to look at the commercial areas. That might be a potential spot for a boat landing or barge ramp, or something like that. Sorry, this match was loud. So currently there's only a few of them that are there that would be commercial. Sunset Landing. Basically Taylor's Wharf. Bennett's. Coleman's Cove. The end of Roses, or
No, it's a boatyard.
is there one below
No, that's just,
Central.
Just coloration.
Three
All
more
right.
central.
yeah, Central is there,
it? Sorry,
and then,
Central Landing.
Artist Point.
Yeah.
No, it's
No, not ours,
Yeah.
that's,
That is the top one, the northern one. Spring,
yeah,
It's called Spring.
Central, and
You're listing the items that are currently designated as CFMS.
correct. So most of these sites without a large amount of work. And then most of them are in communities, like boatyards out of there, that's privately owned. Coleman's Cove. That a protected sand dune in there also. Is there something in there, I can't remember.
not the whole code, I mean, the standard part.
But then there's still no access to that commercial. Everything around is privately owned.
Sandy Point, Jank Road, or Coleman Cove,
Coleman's Cove.
South Shore Drive.
Well, the specific
It would be
CFM,
off
That's a
South
big
Shore
deal.
Drive, it would be off
It's not.
Sandy Point. Sandy Point is a protected area.
Oh, I'm talking about here.
The elevation and the lack of water have been the two.
the road access to Coleman Cove that is currently used by fishermen to get down to the beach is in the coastal area resource system.
No water there, either.
Yeah, good job. Central landing, I don't see that being an adequate place, that's pretty shallow there too.
Maybe
So we put water, there's a chunk of ledge right out there, it could be prohibited, but it's not.
But then there's two properties on either side of the,
Yeah.
on the side of the hill.
Unless they said,
I don't know the setbacks available there for our, what is it, right of way down to the
Yeah.
town maintained road, obviously.
Yeah.
But it goes down where the old original road went right straight from Roy Hill Road.
Yeah.
Right down through the, to Central Line.
Yeah, and then it goes through two different properties to get there.
That little house on Central Landing Ledge, where on the felt back in Phillips, I believe.
Yeah.
Sits right next to the little water. I'm not saying town shouldn't.
Right, I'm not sure we're in a position to sort of decide, we couldn't develop another.
Yeah.
I kind of agree with Jen that if we're gonna operate barges at Venice, we should commit to managing them appropriately. I mean, that's how I feel. But I don't know if there is another site that might be suitable.
I'm just going through, they asked us to go through and look at them and stuff. Obviously, we know some of them are not gonna be, we can mark them off the list. Boatyard, mark that off the list. Right. Coleman Cove, I don't think that would be a suitable place.
It's often,
Central Landing, we can look at Central Landing. But still, it's going through two different properties in a fairly narrow road. So, but, and then, what's this one here? I don't know, that escapes me where that is. Right. Right there, down to, is this Brennan?
yeah, and I think that's
I don't even
more,
know how to get there.
Spring is down past Chris Burgess' shop.
I think those are reflections of people mooring lobster boat, accessing the lobster boats, not
So
necessarily
it's
good
not on
barge
the same
opportunities.
path.
Down, doing Peter Rice's house.
there's no public road going down to Central Lane.
There's a right of way.
Yeah, there's a right of way.
There's a right of way.
Okay. Then there's no public road that goes to Springers.
Oh, that's not Spring, that's the end of Henderson.
That's Henderson.
It's Henderson Road ends in the private parcel that belongs to Norma Moore. But it ends short of the shore.
And there's only a public easement right away to the shore, there's no town.
Right.
So pretty much, and then Sunset Landing. So Sunset Landing, we still, all we have is a right of way down to Sunset. Plus the Sunset Landing, there was discussion about, preserving our beaches that we do have. And are we willing to look at Sunset as a barge area and ruin the beach that we have? So, and then we'd have to create a whole new road, adopt a town road. So we went through this already.
But at Sunset, we own the property,
Mhm.
and there aren't a lot of residences yeah, I don't know, I'm sure that back when, I mean, they must have looked at what the cost to build just the bar track would be, or 2 million. I mean, one thing we could look at is, you know, what if we eliminated barging and a stone pier in one location? That could be beneficial, so I'm just saying, it's worth considering.
But the other thing is Sunset is right out in the open. There's no shelter.
Pretty windy spot, wherever we operate as a municipality, we have to think about access, safe access, good access, and winter maintenance.
Yeah, and I think the same is true if we're operating, I mean, if the community is using barging at Venice, then we should have the same. I mean, because we're using it for our trash, I mean, we're part of the problem, so to speak. But I think we do need to know what the road situation is down there, so we're still working on trying to come up with a survey for that.
Correct.
Do we think we have to actually survey it, or do we have the information?
So the last meeting, the direction that you provided me with was to gather this information and talk to Lionel Plant, which Mark was with me when we met. I looked into by gathering abutting surveys, and you can roughly determine based on what the town owns for the length and for the width, and looking where some of the poles are, kind of where the property line is marked. So there is a general idea. If you measure the length of the road from the start down, the town property based on, you know, as it's stated in the documents, you know, it does go down right to the watermark. But I think that going forward, if there's any work that's gonna be done or anticipated thought of doing it, I think that there would need to be a motion to authorize me to, get a survey done. I also looked at the different, reserve accounts to see where that money could come from. Typically, with this kind of work, in the past, the selectmen has pulled it out of contingency. I asked a surveyor twice for a quote, and I didn't get an answer back. I reached out to Marjorie, and she thought that it would cost about $3,000 to do something like that. The only reserve account that, based on the description, would be the coastal access that you could pull out of, that the description is similar enough that it could work, but other than that, it would be contingency that would come out.
Do you know how much we have in coastal access?
$10,835.
Do you know if that was earmarked for anything?
Not, I know that in the past it was to do, you know, paths down to, right away to shore and stuff like that, but from my knowledge, any ongoing current projects, I don't believe that there is anything that money would specifically be going to.
If I may, Vika, you mentioned our conversation with Lionel Plant, I'd like to touch on a couple of things that we talked to them about down there. We asked them about trucks backing up the road and why that would be happening, why it would need to happen. And what I heard from them is, we don't ever want to have to back trucks up the length of the road or down the length of the road, but sometimes it's necessary. When I asked when it was necessary, the only answer I really got was if it was really crowded down there and they couldn't move things around, or a vehicle just couldn't turn around because of the size of it. And a few times they brought things to the stone wall. So we did ask them that question, specifically about the backing up. The other question that I asked Coley and the other young man, I can't remember his name. It looks like you're having trouble getting truck going off because the beach is dug up and washed out. And that's true. A few years back, as we all remember, we placed some stuff on the beach and did it without permission from anyone at DEP, and that should never happen, and the stuff was removed. But recently, I think you got permission to put that little bit of gravel down there, which is better. You know, now look at that, and it's better, but all that it is a little bit of gravel. And if the sea gets angry or the sky gets angry with a lot of rain, gravel's not gonna move around. So we had some conversation. The other question I asked them, would there be a way, in their opinion, if we could help to make the staging or weighting of vehicles any better? And we didn't really come to a conclusion. I suggested the same old suggestion that I've suggested, which may not be a good one, of having some big vehicles weighed up on the side of South Road as they're driving back to Venice Cove, past the old family house, before they reach the corner of Venice Cove Road. Start between vehicles that have waited there in the past. They don't do it all the time. But the answer we got, I think, from Bard's company, correct me if I'm wrong, because the communication can be difficult. They do try sometimes, but some of the truck drivers don't answer, some of the barge captains don't always try.
It's hard to
keep
monitor, you don't
following.
know who's
So,
coming and going out those
We didn't,
barges.
we didn't get very far with some of our conversations, but we did reach the subjects. I just wanted to-
The one takeaway that I got from that, well, a few things from that meeting, we spent almost 2 hours talking to them, is that they have employees who don't want to come to Shebeg. They have, people who don't want to barge to Shebeg. Shebeg is the busiest community out of all the communities they work with, coastally. He gave me a piece of paper. He did say he was gonna write up a memo with some recommendations and suggestions, from the, barging perspective, about, what could be helpful, and then possibly some other people that we can talk to who've gone through this process where barges have been developed in, other areas. But he said that between January 1st and July 28th, 254 landings at Bennett's Cove. 36 per month, averaging 150 to 200 vehicles per month. So it's a lot that goes through there. But it sounds like they're just as frustrated as the other person about even coming in there. They don't want to come in here anymore because it's a waste of their time. They'll spend an hour with a truck being stuck on the beach, trying to get it off. And it's, it's a nuisance to them just as much. So, I mean, I think they're just as eager to see any improvements as, anybody else to try to get in and out of there as quickly as they possibly can.
Eric,
Yeah, can you just clarify, maybe, I'm not sure I understood, and you saw my email. What did you do for, placing gravel down there? Was it just in the road above the high tide line, or did you go down into the area that was running?
Where the tire marks and the pictures that I showed you, they didn't go down to that area. It was what the road work, Chuck was paying attention to where the highest part of the seaweed was and doing his best not to cross past that. But it's where they would come off, where that turnaround, where the landing area is, that's where they put the gravel and spread the gravel.
And so was that area also experiencing rutting, and was it?
If you go down the road, there's really runoff all the way down the road. And so what that area, we received the complaint about the tire tracks on the beach, but then getting off of there and not having much traction to get up on top. And so what they did is they did some of their routine road work, and we made sure DEP was okay with it on the road, not going down to the beach, so then they could kind of gain some traction as they were getting up.
It's above HAS.
What's that?
It's above HAS.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, just want to be sure I was clear. 'Cause I obviously misunderstood originally.
No, I, knowing how difficult the situation is, I didn't want to try to cause more of an uproar in any way, but also knowing all of, I mean, 40 loads of just road material that was coming. It was going to be a lot of wear and tear in a very short period of time, and so having received those complaints, we really tried helping improve it a little bit without causing any more issues.
So just to comment on that, Carol, I understand you're trying to get a clarification or something like that. That's what I'm trying to get away from, the conversations and the communications in email that the public's not aware of. And I know you brought it up, you said basically what you said in your email, but I just would like to have, more in the selectmen meetings than in email communication.
I guess, I understand. I think there's a lot of communications that go on, it would have been good to be aware of the communications going on between the DEP and the code enforcement officers, for example, and then maybe I wouldn't have had a question, but, I guess we can talk about that. But, so you're saying I shouldn't be emailing Vika and asking those questions?
The sense that I got in the email saying that you were looking for clarification, which is fine, but basically, Vika, can you bring my answer to this, and this to the meeting? That's what I basically would. That's what I'm looking at. If I'm wrong, just you guys tell me.
No, I just want to, so you would prefer that I come to the meeting with those questions?
Yes.
Okay, because I was really just trying to give her a heads up so that she.
Or exactly, if you want to give her a heads up and just state it, but to me, it looked like you wanted to answer right away.
No, I said it at the meeting,
So,
but that's okay.
All right. Sorry.
No, I mean, I just wanted to kind of ask the questions ahead of time so we could have an answer for the meeting, and I'm getting a little clarity, but anyway. And it's because that's a pretty sensitive issue in the community, and so that's why I'm concerned. But I won't ask those questions, if that's the way you want it.
No, you can ask the questions at this time. Yeah. All right. Bob, you had a comment.
I was just gonna point out that I did check out the wheelgrass situation and at Venice. And from the low tide line to the extent of eelgrass, according to the DMR's 2018 study, it's 160 feet. So we're not impacting eelgrass at Venice the way we would be, for example, at Sunset. The eelgrass boundary is much closer to Sunset. I haven't looked at Coleman or other places, but it's pretty easy to do on there.
So the eelgrass is 160 feet away from the low tide.
From the extent of low tide where their prop wash is going to be when they're unloading. That's an estimate, because I know they're not down there at low tide. They're not always there at high tide, but they're below half tide. And they don't want to be there below half tide. I'm just trying to estimate on that, but it's a good thing. Is the DMR's and the Army Corps' specification for protection of eelgrass when you're doing aquaculture leases, which have to be at least 20 feet away from the eelgrass to keep it safe.
Any other comments? Questions? Mark?
I also specifically asked Colin and the other young man about the great big barge that they own, which is a lot bigger than their again. And basically that barge draws a lot more water. And that isn't able to get into a lot of places, so they don't like to bring it anywhere near a lot of barge ramps like that, and barge ramp on that one, because it grounds out somewhere in a lot of places, or it's steeper, and I made the comment that his ramp didn't look too good on that barge, and he quickly made a comment that our barging activity had contributed to that, and maybe it had, maybe it hadn't. The hard thing about scheduling a barge on this island, whether you're a municipality or a contractor or a homeowner, is you can't really tell CTC, Lionel Plant, or Casco Valley, or whoever you're scheduling with, I don't want you to bring that barge, I want you to bring the other barge, or I don't want you to land here, I want you to land over there. I mean, they make the decision on what you ask them to bring, and when you bring it, and what the tide is, and what works for them. Right? And I've been thinking about Chandler's Cove Wharf, you look at Chandler's Cove Wharf, and that's another area where some people have mentioned that we should talk to the Department of Transportation. But I can't help but go over there a month and think about how impact that road is. We're getting ready to pave it, and it's really small, and those corners are a problem. And even if we're successful in moving those telephone poles after the road paved, which I'm not thrilled about, but whatever, I'll come out and wash, I guess. I don't see that. I mean, having a conversation with DOT would be fine, anytime with me, but I'd like to have a purpose for the conversation, and my purpose for having a conversation with DOT, quite frankly, I'd rather see it here about Cousins Island rather than the Chandler's Cove Wharf. That's just my preference. I just don't know if they would ever consider building a wharf big enough with all of the mail coming through there, all of the freight coming through there, all of the UPS and FedEx and Amazon coming through, leaving that bargain over there.
And the fishermen too.
It's even worth talking about. I think it is. I don't mean to be negative, I'm just pointing out reality.
I spent a lot of time looking at all the different locations, and to me, there's two. And one of them would be difficult, if not impossible, to get permitted, and would cost us north of $2 million. That was the number that was in the budget, 1.6 or something like that, in the budget back when we were talking about Sunset 5 years ago. I don't really want to go to the town meeting and suggest that we spend what's going to be at least $2 million by now to build just a barge ramp, plus the legal issues of right of way versus a town road access. But I think our focus ought to be, how do we make the barge access at Venice safe and smoothly functional, so that it's a routine part of the day, as opposed to the constant hangups that are happening down there now that cause all that.
You're right to, if you're gonna go for either a new development or big improvements on any existing area, I think the planning board is gonna have to be involved. I think there's gonna have to be some real considerations and some real public hearings, the real impact, the necessary changes if they're being recommended, safety, traffic, buffering, so on and so forth.
Site plan
Drainage, setback, coastal erosion is a real thing with the sign, and the barging on the beach doesn't happen. You roll big trucks up a beach with cement truck weighing 90,000 pounds, and it ruts the road, and then it rains 3 inches. The bad form.
All right, any other comments before I open it up to the public? All right. Any comments from the public?
Just having had to deal with the DEP on a barge ramp that, well, that lands on the beach over at Cousins. DEP puts a lot of weight in historic use before, I can't remember the year, 1985 or something like that. So if there's no additional impact, even if you destroyed, an acre of eelgrass, if it was done before that date, the continuing impact is not going to be, you're not going to be penalized for that continued impact of the barge ramp. So at Bennett's, where it's been used, I think, he said since 1972, obviously that's going to be before that date. So I don't think that eelgrass would be an issue there, where it's like a new land. Definitely.
So, I'm gonna try and make 3 points. The first point is that the running at the top of the beach was caused by a road compactor. And I reported that last time. So there's nothing natural about the running that happened. A compactor compacted the beach, got stuck, made quite a ruckus getting unstuck. And the compacting of the beach is a serious issue. And so just dumping more sand on top of compacted sand is no solution. So that's my first. My second is I was very happy to hear some of the select people speak to protected dunes and private property. And I was equally concerned to not hear a single word about private property, home impact, and environmental damage to protected dunes and bennets. It's a complete omission. So it's a deep concern that there's no awareness of the impact of the increase in barging. So the increase in barging, there's nothing in 1972 that compares with the barging that's done today. And the eelgrass 5 years ago was nowhere near 160 feet. Eelgrass 5 years ago was very close to where the barge is coming in, and the DEP actually has pictures of how the eelgrass had been carved out already 8 years ago with crop walls. So they have those pictures. There's also an eelgrass study that was done at Sunset. And the eelgrass study at Sunset was approvable for development at Sunset. I hear the bias towards continuing barging and escalating barging at Bennett's Cove. And I want to repeat that the expansion of barging at Bennett's Cove will be met. So we will take the action that was promised when this was brought to your attention. I don't know how many years ago, now 2017, I think. I do not believe that an eelgrass study was ever done at Bennett's Cove by the town. I do believe that the town is responsible for the damage to the intertidal area from barging, and that's an ongoing responsibility of the town. I don't think that cleaning up the area addresses the private property concerns, the impact on life, the actual impact on life of having the very, very large trucks backing up continuously. And it's not for minutes, it is for hours. So I appreciate, Mark, that you spoke with, and Vika, that you spoke with the barge operator.
The barge operator has been spoken with many times. And there is no other barge landing in this bay or in Penobscot Bay that is close to houses. And with the numbers that Vika just read off, barging has expanded tremendously in the last 5 years. Tremendously. So it needs regulation. The barging needs regulation. We cannot have, at Bennett's Cove, we cannot have open barging at the convenience of the operator or the convenience of the 12 regular users of the barge. We can't do it. It's no longer viable. So I appreciate you hearing this. And I will let you know that I do video all of the activity around the protected dunes and around the head of the beach. I'll continue to do that. And if we do end up in a situation where we're on opposite sides, the video is to protect the truth. So there have been a number of false accusations 5 years ago and just recently. When everything is videoed, those false accusations don't stand. So thank you for listening.
Any other comments?
I also appreciate that you had the conversation with Chloe. But I would, well, I'm dissatisfied with, and I kind of got that feeling that you were not satisfied with his responses, Mark. And you know, especially the back end. And I was thinking as you were, you know, reporting on your talk with Coley, these are our roads. You know, it's not the water, it's our roads. And I wonder, since they're our roads, if we can tell Coley how to use them. And that would apply to the staging as well. And I of course don't buy that, you know, community. Of course, it would require some coordination of communication, but they managed to coordinate in terms of telling the drivers approximately what time they need to bring an empty truck or whatever truck back, you know, for loading on the barge. So it seems to me that it's possible to include the alternative staging area. A couple other points. I guess it was a few days ago. You know, there were many trucks, and there were 2 or 3, maybe more, waiting to get onto the barge when the barge landed and the trucks coming off. And for, you know, I mean, I know my First Amendment rights are still protected, but for an unexplained reason, that's in regard to talking to a driver. I didn't, but for an unexplained reason, those trucks that were, however many, I can't remember, Rodney saw them as well. Those trucks that were waiting backed all the way up the road, presumably to make room. That's the only conclusion I could draw, to make room for the trucks that were coming off the barge and driving up the road. Um, I've forgotten what that second point I was gonna make. I, I, I thought I heard one of you say that maybe some of the sand was put in the turnaround area. When I walked down the day of the, dumping of the sand and smoothing it out, it appeared to me it was only in the straightaway there. Today, I walked down and there was a lot of loose sand at the entrance to the turnaround. When I say loose sand, deep ruts, not terribly deep, but maybe someone had a little difficulty over on the end. But I agree with pretty much everything that Pam said. And I appreciate what you said, Jim, about, maybe if we're going to continue to use that site, it has to be safer. I was rereading the attorney Scott Anderson's letter, which stresses safety. I was at Rodney's a few years ago, and I couldn't believe the noise. I mean, I had not experienced, it's, his living room is, I don't know, 10 to 15 feet from the road. In regard to the eelgrass, down kind of at low tide, I took some pictures in 2015 on an extraordinarily low tide, and they're on my phone. I was taking the pictures because of the cable being very exposed at low tide. But I'll look at the pictures again and send them to you in regard to the eelgrass. It was this time of year in 2015.
All right. Anything else? Paul?
I think it's important to look at this whole issue actually from the barge operator's perspective. I know we all look at it and we respect you, for going around the island and trying to identify other lanes and potential sites. But the reality is that there are really two routes. CPC provides a valuable seasonal service to an already busy spot that we're all trying to work through, okay? And they pull a lot of traffic to that end of the island for their activities. But on a year-round basis, the vital goods and services that come to this island come from an operator out of Portland. That operator out of Portland is going to come to and from Chandler's Cove. The route down the bay from Cliff Island, Hope Island, Long Island, Diamonds, Beach, etc., passes through Chandler's Cove. If one operates the barge, and I'm not saying everything has to be done to placate Line Plan Associates, but one only has to look at the route and realize that all goods and services that this island needs come through Chandler's Cove and essentially back. That includes not just trash removal, okay, the roads and the materials that we need to build or fix, maintain our roads. It also includes fuel, right? The fuel barge that I rely upon has been out of service for 3 months. He just returned to service. This island is not unique. Every island in Casco Bay had shipped for the last 3 months to receiving petroleum products by barge. There's only one operator who will do that. Mark mentioned the difficulty. It is a logistical nightmare trying to get products out here on a given time to coordinate between the operator, the barge, okay, and the facility receiving it. It's very difficult. But it's necessary so each and every one of us, okay, can drive, can keep a warm house, etc. I hope the barge keeps running, all right, and they overcame their difficulties and they are back in service. But if it goes down again, or if that operator can't sustain his operation, then we will have to rely upon the operator on a year-round service from Portland. The safest, quickest way to make this all happen is to improve service at Bennett, respecting the neighborhood and the neighbors, but improving the physical access to this island so that trucks, equipment, and services that are necessary, okay, here on this island can get safely and quickly going on. Thank you.
I'd just like to reiterate that there are 12 regular users of the barge service, and they're all related to businesses. And those businesses do serve the island. And they all have certain relationships with Final Plant, as do several who sit on the board. And the level of disrespect that has happened at Bennett's Cove, I don't think it's recoverable. And it's the same distance from Portland to Sunset as it is from Portland to Bennett. It's the same distance. So we do have something that's viable. We have a viable alternative. And regulating the traffic at Bennett's Cove was suggested 5 years ago. Very specific suggestions for how to regulate it were made. And those were not put in place. And the deterioration is so significant because they weren't put in place. And there is an alternative. So the expansion of barging that is happening requires an alternative. And whether that's shared with Bennett's Cove or not, another site is needed. There's no way to put a ramp that makes the disrespect to the cove and to the neighbors any better. It's just more disrespect, more frequent. So thank you.
I think ultimately it's a community decision, what we do for barging. I think, obviously, I think everybody agrees we need improvement down there. So I would like to make a motion that we authorize the expenditure of, whatever, up, $3,000 from the Coastal Access Fund to do a road survey down there, so we can at least understand what our access options are in terms of the road. I think that's the first step, and if there are serious limitations, then we'll know that now. And if there aren't, we can consider what that means. But I think it's the first step. We've sort of talked about this a couple of times, and I think the road survey is essential.
There's a second.
I'll second.
Any comments? Bob?
I would suggest that we make that 5,000 instead of 3,000, call it up to 5,000.
Good with that.
The only question is, I think you said there's $10,000 or $11,000 in that account, is that right? I have permission to ask Justin Doty a question. Justin, I think we asked your committee, the Coastal Waters Committee, to help us start taking a look at the needs of some coastal access areas for the public.
Yeah,
Have you guys had a chance to discuss any of that?
so we did, but I also, we weren't really formally asked. I mean, it was mentioned, but I've asked for correspondence and
Okay.
more letters and some ideas. I've personally gone around to most of the ones I know. You know, I think one of the letters was pertaining to Hamilton Beach.
Yeah.
And I think like $200. So
Okay.
that. So as far as big money to help coastal access, we haven't talked about it.
So in your opinion, leaving 5,000+ in there is not going to endanger any improvements? Certainly, I'm not suggesting beach stadium, but.
No, I absolutely,
Okay,
I was.
thank you. So I was just wondering if that was the best place to take that. I'm not against it. I don't want to start taking a contingency
Me neither.
quickly because we may need that somewhere else, so I'm fine with that. Could I also just very quickly let Jackie and Pam know that again, this was just part of the conversation then, and Vika, I think you'll remember this. I said to Coley and the other individual, at some point, there may be a need to sit down more formally about some agreement of when the barging takes place. In other words, is it only allowed Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to whatever? Is it not allowed on weekends? Is it not allowed on holidays? A rational conversation, realizing that when you have a conversation with a supplier or a carrier, you have to not bow down to them, but you have to be careful how that conversation goes to maintain the relationship. I just wanted to let you know, I'm not making all this stuff up. The conversations happen, the results are less than perfect. I agree with Pam, there was some discussion of some regulation that was never put in place.
All right, any other comments from the board?
Can I ask a question about the coastal access concept?
Yeah.
What does that coastal access term mean?
She's got the definition, but basically any coastal access, like, the beach ramp to Hamilton Beach.
That's what I kind of thought, but I
Any way
wasn't,
any way the public can get to the beach.
yes,
Unless
safe,
I'm wrong.
safe,
Wow.
safe and effective access is what, I guess.
You know, out of that.
Capital structure, road, path construction, repairs, facility, public access to coastal waters and beaches.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
So it is unfortunate that there's only one real vendor that can provide this service. There used to be two, and unfortunately, the other vendor didn't make business work here. Part of that is because Coley is very aggressive. Just having worked with other islands that he serviced, I personally, one time he couldn't get out and schedule some, he couldn't get out and piss me off with Bluffton Island. We took him off. That guy's been a great barge customer of CTC since, because Coley will not take him back out there. So he can be like really vindictive, I guess, in this business. So we need him. That being said, like you said, we're his busiest island that he services. So I would think that he needs us just as much as, it's going to be an interesting conversation you guys having.
So for my comment on this, I'm not looking at Bennett's just serving Lionel Plant. I'm looking at Bennett's as partner. It just says, some conversations we've had about the Stone Pier, we're asking CTC just currently servicing the island there. I'm not looking at how we're gonna make it better for CTC. I'm looking at how we're gonna make it better for the island and how we're gonna make it better for whoever else takes over. You know, the CTC might demolish next week or not. But you know what I mean. I'm looking as
for the island, not necessarily for individuals or myself or anybody else. So, just wanted to put that out there.
And we can't,
What's that?
we cannot make public policy aimed at directing or controlling private business. That's not legal.
No, I understand, but I just wanted to put it out there, us asking Lionel Plant for his, and it's his opinion, and it's ultimately, it's gonna be, exactly. It's just like asking CTC their opinion about the stone wall. That's all I wanna say, and I don't wanna, sorry. Yeah,
I think you had a motion on the table.
yeah. One more comment and there we go.
Yeah. So there are actually 3 barge operators that work the whole state, and we've never put the town work out to bid. We don't know what the market actually looks like now and what they would require in order to become a regular barge operator in Casco Bay. We don't know. I'm glad that you made the comment because a barge operator told me about conversations that they were in with the town of Shebig to build a ramp. And told me this point blank when I asked why a compactor was delivered at half tide. Why would a road compactor ever be delivered at half tide? And he said, well, if the barge ramp was in today, that thing might not have gotten stuck. And said that he was in communication with the town. And if there were issues with the town compacting the beach, should talk with the town about that.
Thank you. All right, so there's a motion on the table, all in favor? All right, moving on to communications.
Sir, do you have a really go with
We can go over your stuff first and
we probably have a lot of the correspondence, so yes.
probably.
First one is, a communication in reference to some suggestions that were received about doing, some work down at the ramp and wharf. Mark also followed up with an email similar with some of the communications that he's received from some residents. In reference to that, I had spoken with the Public Works. They went down and they fixed it. They have not gotten a chance to go down to fix the ladder down on Cousins Island float. But we also received a communication with a compliment about how quickly that work was done once the communication was received. So.
Any comments on that?
The other one is a correspondence that I received from Jim Butler, just as an FYI. He received a freedom of access request, and that's something that I just received his monthly report, and actually a couple of these are on that report, which there'll be some follow-up happening about them. But the freedom of access is on anything pertaining to any construction that is happening on Hope Island between January 1st, 2018 and October 31st, 2021. Came from an attorney, and a Barbara Kakalidas was CC'd on that. So that's some information that the town's going to have to gather in reference to that. Other than that, there's really no additional knowledge about that or what that's about.
We have a time frame on how long we have to gather the information.
So this was just in an email that was received on September 21st, and then he forwarded it to me a couple days later. I think the official packet and information, exactly what they want and the timeframe that they're hoping for, will be followed. He kind of just sent a general email saying, this is coming your way. The next one is, communication that I was CC'd on, that was from, Justin and Courtney Dowdy in reference to, some, complaints that they had filed, with the code enforcement officer. And the whole board was, CC'd on that as well. And, the reason that I'm bringing it up in is because the board has been CC'd, and it's something that has been brought to, code enforcement officers' attention. In the past, suggestions were made, property owners aren't happy with the suggestions that were made. My suggestion is that it probably should be a discussion with the property owners, or an agenda item, or whatever, your suggestions are. And Justin's here in the audience, I'm assuming for this exact reason, so maybe he has some insight about, what he's hoping to see move forward with this.
You guys don't mind, I'll ask Justin if he wants to speak. Justin?
Yeah, I'm not here to be critical, I just wanted to be heard and, say that I'm somewhat disappointed in the process, but, we did make a complaint, we stuck our necks out last July. This is the first time it's been brought up in the public setting, so, just kind of want to be heard. See what, I don't think this is the time and place to talk about it, but at some point, I would like to see.
Would you like a public conversation or private conversation?
I'm just curious, I guess, how it's gone on this long and how it took 14 months with some action back and forth telling me that action would be taken as far as a violation notice. And then now it's come to tell me it's gray. So, I'm just confused how it can be so wishy-washy when other ordinances seem to be enforced pretty heavily.
Okay. Any comment from the board?
I guess just, could you clarify where things stand right now?
So, I mean, honestly, I feel like I'm just in the middle of it, where I've tried, since I've gotten in, and tell me if I'm wrong, where I've tried, encouraging Jim to follow up with this. And my conversation that I had with him, he had suggestions about how he can work with the property owner that this complaint is in reference to, and try to come up with some suggestions and agreements. And then he brought that information to Justin and Courtney, and they came back with the email essentially disagreeing with any of those suggestions. And so at this point, I don't have any other follow-up other than bringing it to the selectmen and seeing what the next steps are. I don't know whether I'm really in a position to enforce the enforcement that's there. I'm not quite sure what my role is, other than it's here in front of you.
Bob?
I've said this before to individuals, I want to say it publicly. Jim is grossly misinterpreting or not enforcing the land use, the zoning ordinance. The use of that property is not allowed in the land use ordinance. There's a table of things that are allowed. Historically, the way land use ordinances work, if it's not allowed, if the language does not say this is allowed, or this is allowed by exception, or this is allowed with Board of Appeals approval, if it does not say in one of those ways that this activity is allowed, then you cannot do it. And all of Jim's language, all of Jim's emails for the past year and a half have talked about, if I enforce this, I'll have to enforce other things and all these exceptions. I understand trying to work with people, but we can't let our ordinances slide. We have to enforce them. The only, so there's a list of home occupations. What Jim is doing is nowhere close to any of those home occupations, and he doesn't have a home on that land. That land is in the residential zone. I love working with Jim. I've used him several times, and he's a great guy to work with. But what he's doing on that land is not allowed by our land use ordinance, by our zoning ordinance. It's black and white. So I hope it doesn't go to court. If it did, we lose. He'd lose. We lose. That's my thing. All right, Carol?
Yeah, so I don't think we want to get into the detail now. I agree with Bob, but I think we should put it on the agenda. Or if not the next meeting, the one after that, but I think it should be an agenda item.
Okay, and have the code officer here.
That was gonna be my suggestion, is I think that especially if we're talking about what he isn't doing, we are partially creeping into that personnel and job description, and I don't think that it would be accurate to have that discussion without him being present and explain his portion of it, so I agree with the future agenda item.
I think we also need to have on that agenda item a clarification of what his reporting structure is. And as I understand it, a code officer's decisions on specific interpretations of code issues bear some independence. He has some independence and is accountable to the state authorities and an appeal. There's an appeal process that goes through the Board of Appeals on the island, and from there it goes to circuit court, basically. That aside, I think we need clarification of what his reporting structure is. We know it's not the planning board. It was my understanding under our last town administrator that it was, the buck stopped with the town administrator. So to Vika's comment earlier, I think we owe Vika clarification from the board, from her supervisors, which is us. What is her managerial relationship with the code officer, whomever that code officer might be? And I think we could get input on that from the town attorney. But I think we owe Vika that information, that clarity.
Okay. Mark?
Yeah, the last comment, the one that I would like to have from Natalie, our town attorney. What authority or role does this body have in a complaint of land use when someone is in disagreement with how the ordinances are being enforced or not, or interpreted or not by a code enforcement officer, and is it the correct venue?
We don't have any authority to overturn the code enforcement decision. I mean, I think that's pretty clear. So we have no authority to modify their decision, but I think we have an obligation to hear about the problem. Because we hire and fire the code enforcement officer, so I think he's an employee of the town. I think it's our job to at least understand what the problem is. But as far as I know, we cannot overturn any decision he makes.
Yeah, and moving forward, I don't want to waste time on this. I don't mean that your complaints waste time. I just mean I don't want to go on. Moving forward as a community, I think, it would be nice to have some clarification of how are the ordinances fitting this community now? Do they need tweaking? I can think of one instance where someone fired up a sawmill across the street from the residence and was fairly quickly shut down, from what I remember, on South Road. And my only point to making that point is that was enforced.
Correct.
That's my point.
One other point, and I learned this through working with planning review on the planning board. There is an important part of town governance that we're lacking at this point. And have never had since we left Cumberland, and that is the planning function. The planning board, I learned the hard way, does not have the ability to plan. The planning board is responsible for recommending policies and doing site plan review and a lot of those quasi-judicial things. But the planning function, for example, a planner could sit down with Jim and help Jim find a good solution that fits within the land use ordinance. Planning board can't do that. And I don't think anybody else in our town can because we don't have a planner. We could have some sort of contractual arrangement with a town that has a planner where we had an hourly situation or something like that, but just wanted to put that out there. In these situations and in those questions like Mark was talking about, having a planning capability within the town could be important as we go through this period of fairly rapid activity that's hitting us in all sorts of ways.
Maybe look at long when we have communication with them. When you talk to Long, town administrator.
Yeah. Yeah, they had, I can't remember, though, I forwarded to you, they had some specific things they were interested in.
Yeah, they're gonna bring, one selectman, one resident, and then Amy, Tierney, the clerk. And then we'll ask that clerk to come.
And are we gonna have more individuals?
Yeah, I figured whoever the selectman that was gonna join, I would get together with them and then try to kind of figure out who else we were gonna.
Yeah, and Bo, it might be more appropriate for you to go if you want. I mean, I didn't really understand the context that you were asking. I thought you were just asking someone to communicate.
He's not looking for it to be like a formal town. It was really just a couple of people who play different roles within the community to talk and compare and.
So I think one of them was public safety. So are we gonna have somebody from our public safety side be there?
I'm not quite sure what you're,
Maybe I'm confused here.
No, but I'm just saying.
We're getting on
Yeah, we're
track.
gonna
We're
get on
this.
track.
so,
I have a correspondence.
anyways, yeah.
I think this would be considered correspondence. I was approached by Mr. Hood, the president of the golf club on the street, and he just was saying there's a lot of things to talk about with the golf courses, Audubon Society designation and things like that. And he was hoping that one of the select board members could join, and he was hoping I would. And I said, not my call, but I'll bring it up in correspondence. And I said, there is the ongoing conversation between the town and the golf course relative to parking. Is that what you're talking about? And he said, well, yeah, kind of, but other stuff too. And I said, well, okay, I'll put that out there to the select board as to whether the thing I volunteered for includes other stuff like the Audubon Society or not. Is that correspondent? When verbal?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know, you know, depends on what this board feels like, if that would be. Because I don't think that was the charge of the first team, so I don't know. It's still just communication with the golf course, so I don't know. As far as for me, communication with the golf course is communication with the golf course. And whether there's supposed to be property with the road, and that was all encompassed in that. Again,
Can I clarify? So we're going to, first, we're meeting, we're putting on the agenda for not next week's meeting, but the meeting after, about meeting with Jim Butler.
okay,
Correct? Is that?
Yeah.
So they, and my 2 cents about the golf course is that Bob and I need to get together and talk to the golf course about, you know, the whole thing, and then whatever they bring up, if we feel it's not up to us to talk about at that time, we'll bring that back to you.
okay.
I got two more.
Yeah.
They were both from Matt from CDC. One was, to start, it was in reference to considering a discussion, in terms of law enforcement, or lack thereof, primarily between, Labor Day and Columbus Day. And he can elaborate onto it with the email. It talked about, you know, how that time frame is getting busier and busier. There's more weddings. There's a wedding at the hotel every weekend. And so during those times with events of, you know, 200 plus people drinking, things like that, it's really an environment where law enforcement could and would be essential. The one thing that he had reached out to me a few weeks back asking what it extends in terms of the agreement that we have with Cumberland County. And I reached out to them and asked a follow-up question about what it would entail in covering specific events such as the weddings at the hotel. And unfortunately, that coverage doesn't fall within the town's budget. So I think in particularly with this discussion, it would be a future agenda item or a discussion where there would be potential adjustments or some kind of, you know, regulation put in place or suggestions about what or if the town wants to do in terms of adding or having law enforcement available when there are large gatherings outside of times where Cumberland County isn't here covering us.
Can I ask my question real quick? Is it mainly you notice when basically it's open, like weddings, big gatherings like that?
Big gathering, so like you kind of alluded to before, I don't think we necessarily want to talk about just one business or entity, but you know, anytime you have a large gathering like that, where there's, you know, people, I don't know whether it was COVID, you know, sort of easing up or whatever, but this summer has been the worst summer as far as seeing and dealing with, you know, people that are just unruly, drunk on the stone wharf. I'm sure other places too, but that's just where we observe them. And that's kind of continued, and it certainly has the potential to continue after the deputy is no longer on the island. We had issues all summer, even with the deputy on the islands, and I spoke with the deputy after we had some issues, and he did a great job being there late evenings on Saturdays and Fridays when we knew that there was potentially going to be a lot of people, a lot of traffic on the wharf. Even with him there was some situations that got pretty ugly with, you know, groups of over 50 people, where, you know, it just could have escalated easily. So even with one deputy there for these large events, sometimes it looks like it's right on the cusp of boiling over. With no law enforcement at all, it's even worse, and the potential for you know, bad things happen is even worse. I know from, you know, our experience and being, you know, we've kind of become the default for getting the deputy when any law enforcement matter is on the island. Sometimes it can be an hour and a half before the deputy gets out here. So if there's an incident on Stone Wharf and, you know, worst case scenario, the ferry is involved, the ferry crew is involved, then that becomes, you know, awkward. And we have to leave to go get law enforcement. And it's going to be a long time, and a lot can happen in that amount of time. So my initial question to Dika was, does our contract with Cumberland County allow for, you know, sort of calling in advance of an issue? If we have 150 or 200 people that we know are going to be on the island, can we call and have that law enforcement presence there before you actually need them? And the answer was no. It's a special detail. It's $75 an hour, I think, a minimum of 4 hours.
And if that's the case, who should incur that cost? Should it be the entity that is creating the large gathering? And that's kind of what Deacon and I talked about a little bit, and I think it needs more discussion for the town.
And that's also something that the Cumberland County Sheriff suggested to me too, that you don't, if you do make this a town discussion, don't have it be the taxpayers issue, don't have it be the entity that's driving the people back and forth, have it be whoever is responsible for that 100+, 200+ gathering, and have it be some kind of a town requirement where outside of the contract, or even within that contract with Cumberland County, that they have to have that coverage, so. But like Matt said, discussion for a future topic. And then the last communication is, once again from Matt, and this is more in reference of asking whether there should be a workshop between CTC and the town to begin this discussion, but it's about the right of way on Cousins Island and repair and maintenance that is needed within the parking lot, and the agreement that exists within, the town leasing it, the CTC subleasing it, who's really responsible for it, and how do big long-term projects play into it. One that Matt had mentioned specifically, with sea level rise, looking long-term, who's gonna take care of that, how's that gonna play into it, so his question was to conclude the email was with the select board, we willing to set up a workshop with CTC to start this discussion.
I think it wouldn't hurt. I mean, kind of rely on that parking lot. It's kind of our property. We're releasing it to you guys, so. As far as I remember. Mark knows more about it. State-owned, but it's state-owned, but it's leased us by the state, and we lease it to them.
Yeah.
So, yes,
So I sent, in that email, I sent the lease, I don't know if you guys have read that lately, but the lease and then the sublease, and it sort of lays out the responsibilities. And I think, one of the goals of the first, discussion would be to really make sure that CTC and the town are on the same page with, where those responsibilities lie. And then I think, maybe, I don't know what the next step would be, maybe it would be to talk to the DOT, because when I read this lease, it doesn't look like the DOT has left us on our own with this parking lot, which is gonna have it's gonna need capital, major capital improvements at some point. If we're talking about the need to raise the stone wharf, 4 feet potentially, you look at the lower end of that parking lot and how it's already underwater at some points. So far, CTC has covered some of the smaller capital improvements. We've done some drainage improvements there. We've built up the lot a little bit along the fence. In reading this lease, I don't think we should have done that. I think that the DOT at the very least has to approve any capital projects. But I also, in reading this, to me, it looks like they are responsible for covering the expense of capital projects. So I think the first, like I said, the first workshop would be for CTC in the town to look through this lease together, see if we're on the same page with it, and then start the conversation with the DOT about the parking lot. And the letter.
Sure.
So before we have a workshop, can you get a copy of the lease?
That's all
Mark?
There was one more part, communication that we received from Dylan Dowdy, who sent us an email that you may not have
I have.
gotten.
I did not get that email, no.
So his email was basically asking, if we were gonna pay Channels Cove Road, and I said yes, and he asked if it was going to be paid all the way down to the wharf, and the answer to that unfortunately is no. And because Channels Cove Road ends right at the parking lot near Danny's corner there, the state originally improved that area. His concern was the hill when you're coming up over deteriorating because probably there's some ledge or something on the road. Undermining the road, and do we plan on fixing it? So I would like to make a motion to direct the town administrator to have the town road crew look at either digging up and repairing that area or temporarily leveling it off or something to make it better until we have a bigger plan to fix it.
There's a motion on the table. And Bob, any comments?
So Mark, are you not proposing to pave it? Is that what you're saying? I
Well,
just want to be sure I get it.
Not gonna pave it right now, but at least repair and find, or repair it, or find out what's going on.
Okay,
And
Okay.
the problem was, I was hoping we could incorporate it right into this Channel 12 road, but it didn't work out that way.
okay.
It's a simple answer.
So that's the best we can do under the circumstances.
I think,
Yeah.
But if we repair it this year, it might fall into the chip seal next.
No, because the chip seal will only cover the paving that the company does.
It won't cover the.
They're chip sealing the work that they're completing.
and without wasting everybody's time, we'll start to get late. I don't believe the road company is going to recommend cold mix in that parking lot.
That's my question. That answers my question.
All right, Jen?
Activity in the vehicle.
Do you know how sometimes they have like extra? Is if they do, can they just keep going with it?
It's concrete like the 295.
Chuck went on the drive with me, for, and this is similar to the topic, but slightly off. When, Doug Fowler came out here last week and we drove, looked at the roads that just got chip sealed with the roads that need to be paved, marked out, and sprayed. Chuck asked that same question. You guys just, casually move and it's, I mean, it's what he did recommend, just like he did with the telephone pole is, you're probably gonna have some extras, do as you please with it. But they're not gonna be moving, because it is for, that is, well, it seems a small, that's a pretty decent stretch for them too.
Legal issues, if they start
Yeah.
paving for party A when the land belongs to party B, but take some chances.
So is it's state, that section is state owned?
Yeah, the question about
Mm.
who owns what at this point.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to this. I think we probably should have a conversation at some point, but I think the DOT, Department of Transportation, improved that parking area in Hill. But I believe that they told the town of Cumberland, now town of Chevy, it is now your responsibility to maintain, but I don't know.
Can Vika try to find documentation on that, or is there somebody who can talk to a DOT to find out what the situation?
Yeah, Rob Elder may still be there for 20 County. Rob Elder's the guy that we've talked to about the work in the past.
Let's see if we find him.
Can you share them?
This conversation has brought to mind, that I want to ask for follow-up on a previous communication that I sent to Vika when after, a rainstorm, I noticed that, there was more of a riverbed, created on the hill, the Bennett's Cove Hill. And she said she'd have Chuck take a look at it. Any report on that?
I'll follow up with him and ask him specifically.
It's getting worse. I mean, people who go, I'm sure you who go down there are aware of it.
All right, we have a motion on the table, do a second. Mark, are you looking to give them the time frame? For it to be completed,
November 15th.
all right? Okay.
I think it's good for us to give them set goals, so that way we're not continuously bringing it up and then, people are held accountable.
Just to go, if they have to go over that goal, it's fine.
Well, if they do, they have to give, they have to tell us all. So, all right, so motion, seconded, all in favor? So we've got correspondence from Dana Morse. I sent that to you guys. He was looking for just to see if we're interested in getting some more information about the main sea grant. Not quite sure what this, I know kind of what this is. That's probably why he's looking to inform us, because we're like, you know, so, and then you get coastal waters and harbor master involved and all that, so everybody's on the same page, they know what they're talking about, somebody asking a question.
I think what they're looking for is to have a conversation with a town who has had members of the community in public hearings regarding aquaculture leases. And has had good comments to make, but has also said that they wish that the town had more control over lease decisions. It starts with the fact that Chebig is just over the northern edge of a very large closed area that comprises everything from Long Island to Falmouth and all the way down to Portland. So if you live in Portland or Westbrook and you want to open an aquaculture lease, the first water you see where you can do it is in the town of Chebig, the waters of the town of Chebig. So we see a lot and therefore we complain a lot. And we've asked, how do we get legislature involvement in amending the lease process that was first designed long before this current wave of aquaculture? That was just cooked sea farms. How do we change things with the legislature so that the towns have more of a say? There are people within Sea Grant who think that conversation should be had with a lot of towns. And they think Chebig is a rational place to start because they think we're rational. So that's why they're wanting to.
They don't know.
I know, but that's why they're kind of using us as a beta for
As a
that
pilot.
conversation.
That's what Dana said, we're a pilot community to see how far they're gonna go with this.
So my question to you guys, are you interested in us taking any, going through with this with him? If so, do you want to do a workshop? Or do you want to do it as a, like a little part of the regular board select meeting?
Oh, personally, I think it should be separate from a selectmen meeting, and it would be him and Natalie probably, and but I think it should be limited to the entities, coastal waters, harbor master, and ourselves, because they're the entities that have that function in the municipality.
So I did have a brief conversation with him with that, and I said, unfortunately, with it being, the type of government that we have, if all the board of selectors are there, it has to be a public meeting.
Oh, yeah.
So I told him the way around that, so that we can get, so that, the board of selectmen gets their questions in, coastal water gets their questions in, and, harbor master, whoever he wants to be, any official who wants to have their questioning. In the beginning of the workshop, just make it solely that we're the ones that are asking the questions, they're asking the questions, and that's it, basically back and forth. And at the end, if there's time allowed, 15, 20 minutes, that the public has time to comment or ask questions. So he seemed agreeable that way. But as far as the workshop or the board of selectmen meetings, that's where I don't know, that'd be up to you guys.
I think it would take too much time to do as a board, in a board meeting.
Okay.
Just a 1 hour workshop.
Okay. Any preferable date. Okay, so I'll get back in contact with him and see if he can come up with some dates and then we'll bounce back and forth.
Discussion date, I think workshop for the year.
The other one is, public, being public. Or,
Oh, yeah, public radio, yeah, requesting one in a
$100 donation. I can't remember if we did this before or not. Honestly. But
I know Margaret used to donate to them personally, that's probably how he ended up the town ended up on that list.
Seems like, I mean, I donate, but I'm not sure if it's appropriate for the town to.
I think they're specifically using this climate-driven series as a way to say, we're doing all this for towns, but I also, I could give them more money than I should, but I'm not comfortable with the town giving them money.
Okay. All right.
I think we should all.
He'll be here.
All right, so all in agreement? No, not for right now. All right. Any other communications? Carol?
Just briefly, I had someone forwarded me from the governor's office, just that, and I assume, Vika, you're aware that there is a grant fund available to municipalities for energy improvements. And so this is a grant program to help support things like, mostly energy related, lighting changes, heating changes, that sort of thing, and it's pretty substantial. And it might be worthwhile, I think somebody mentioned in one of the meetings, the town office could consider something like heat pumps, which could be reinstalled someplace else if we build another building, so it's not a waste of money. And it might make the facility more comfortable both in the winter and the summer. So it might be worth looking at. It's the facilities committee might be somebody who could kind of explore that for you, but I think it's pretty good. Sort of reimbursement, not 100%, but I think there's a pretty good benefit to the town.
Yeah, I don't think right now that facility can take the.
I don't know. I mean,
I really don't think they had the electrical
System, or man, at the moment, but,
maybe we could get it to upgrade.
yeah, I think we're moving in that direction. Right now, I'm trying to get a 400 amp upgrade for a customer, and the supplier is telling us anywhere from 5 to 12 months to get the outside meter closures.
Well, okay. I mean, I guess,
We're
we're
looking
looking
at
at money that didn't install it, it's an option. I don't know much about the program, but it might be worth having the facilities.
I
committee
agree.
look at it.
Whether we can make it work or not, I agree. It's a good thing to move towards.
And then there's,
Discussion.
I mean, our only public buildings would be the public, the town office, the garage, which I don't know if there's anything there, and the school. And the school, I think, was looking at possibly new furnace.
Would it make sense to make sure that the building improvements committee is aware as well?
That's who I meant.
Do you have a correspondence about that?
Yeah, I'll forward it to you.
Yeah, and unfortunately, too, that committee's charge is just solely for the fire station and town office. It doesn't look at all the other.
Well, the school, I think, is looking at the school side, and then the only other building would be the public works building. But I think that, I don't know whether it's that, it's also things like electric chargers, which I don't know if we're interested in, but the facilities committee seems like a good place to look at.
All right. All right, any other communications? A lot of communications this time. All right, moving on to approve minutes from September 7th, 2022.
So moved.
So,
Any discussion? From the public? All right. All in favor? All right. All right, items to be placed on future agendas. So I got the RFQ, sea level rise, Justin and the CEO.
So that's for October 19th.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
The RFQ, put that on
October 19th. Audit RFQ and Doty's will be on October 19th.
okay.
October 5th, we got the harbor master position discussion. Monthly reports from harbor master, code enforcement officer, and, fire department. Treasurer's report. I'll have a Cumberland County Sheriff's report. We need a motion to approve for us to apply for a new credit card because the Machi Savings Bank has a new market, safety security one that they want us to switch to.
You want to look at the law, you want to discuss the law enforcement? From now on?
I thought we were gonna meet with them oh, that's a general thing.
Yeah, general thing, if we want to pursue either asking Cumberland to go to Columbus Day instead of Labor Day. That might be a thing. So that we can either ask them if they're willing to do that, and then obviously need the renewal contract, extend the dates, obviously, you know, budget season, we need to.
So this is, we're talking about future agenda. items, right?
Next week's agenda item.
That seems like, well, I don't know, you have a better sense how much time everything else is gonna take.
I'm just looking to see if we want to put that on next week's agenda as just a topic to talk about it, to see which way we want to go
Okay,
Yeah. no,
Say yes.
or pursue.
Yeah.
So, all right.
I want to keep it light, keep it down.
Is there anything else that you guys want to talk about? Well, we're not gonna have all these on this one, it's just, so right now, all we got is the harbor master, discussion and the Cumberland sheriff, discussion.
Okay.
The other two are gonna be for the 19th.
Can I ask very quickly, in our opinion, is the coastal water committee and the shellfish committee going to be invited to the discussion?
I
Oh,
emailed,
we should ask.
I emailed them on Monday.
Okay,
On Monday, I think, I don't know, sometime within the last 4 or 5 days, I emailed them and asked them. I told them that the harbor master position will be a discussion on October 5th,
okay,
and they're encouraged to come, and they're, like,
thank you.
All right, can I request that, Jen, if you can dredge up your information that you got from last time? I don't know how easily you find that. That was useful, and yes,
For a meeting with Yarmouth that we keep not having because of COVID and everything. Is that something that Bob and I should contact them? Do you contact them? How does that work?
I can reach out, to, the Yarmouth manager and see both of you on it and start the conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
or anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
A second?
second.
Sorry, I'll be so late.
That's my, that's my,
Uh,
no, we don't.
I'm trying to keep it short.